All right. Good evening. Good morning. Good night. Good afternoon. I don't know what time you guys are watching this show, man. We're going to talk about the Dolphins coaching staff this year, how it pertains to the players they drafted, the players they brought in, the players they already have. How does this coaching staff fit with this team? What are our confidence in them and everything like that? I'm joined by Josh. I'm joined by Taylor. Great to have you guys with me. And so, what are you guys' So we're just gonna get right into it here, guys. What are you guys' thoughts on head coach, head man, Mike McDaniel? It's been kind of a mixed bag with him in his first few seasons here. Last year he kind of turned into a screen king, throwing lots of screen. I think that was more so a product of his offensive line than anything else. But uh, you know, Mike McDaniel was a polarizing figure for the Miami Dolphins, amongst Miami Dolphins fans. You know, I'm also not entirely sure where he fits in the Dolphins' future plans. A lot of that's going to have to do with how the season goes. Mm-hmm. But Taylor, what are your thoughts on Mike McDaniel?
Well, McDaniel, he had early success in 2022, 2023. He was previously the run game coordinator. I did a complete overview real quick here.
Yeah.
Run game coordinator for San Fran from 2017 to 2020. He was the OC in 2021. I don't think he called plays because I think wasn't that the big narrative?
Yeah.
In 2022 was his first time.
Yeah, I think Kyle Shanahan was calling the plays there.
Yeah. He's speaking of Kyle Shanahan. He is a disciple of the Shanahan coaching tree. He has a 28-23 win-loss record in the regular season. He is 0-2 in the playoffs. And just looking at his track record, it does seem like there was such a promising start to his career, especially when you look at that 2022 season. Yeah, you had the concussions from Tua, and that's what really sidelined it. But you end that season with a Week 18 win against the Jets. Now, is that game unwatchable? 100%. I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy to watch that game.
Remember the final score of that game, Taylor?
I don't. I wish
it was 11-6.
I'm sorry. I thought that was our record that season. I had it right here on the sheet.
No, the final score of that game was 11-6.
That's horrible.
And then in the playoffs, the Dolphins take the Bills to the limit with a backup quarterback. So very promising going into 2023, and I think we can attribute that to the fun season with McDaniel.
Yeah.
70 points against the Broncos, putting up tons of numbers against bad teams like the Panthers. The Commanders at the time were really bad as well, the Giants. But when push came to shove, you got to go to KC. It was really freaking cold in KC that night, and nobody could do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
was that the game? Was that the Kansas City game that was like -10?
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
No, it also warrants being said there, Taylor. And I'm sorry to interrupt you here, man, but it also warrants being said. The Dolphins' offensive, that entire team, ironically, was a triage unit except for Tua. You go figure. Tua was the only guy that came to that game healthy. So it just, I'm not trying to make excuses here, but fair is fair. Go ahead,
great seasons in 2022, 2023, all things considered. You want that playoff win, but you go, hey, 2024 is going to be the year. No, it's not. It's going to be an 8-9 record, no playoff berth. You get smoked by Aaron Rodgers in Week 18, where he turns back the clock to the mid-2010s, looking like an MVP self for the first time all year. And you got nothing but injuries all season, including your star quarterback yet again, who you just paid.
Multiple injuries.
Yeah. I say all of that to basically say Mike McDaniel's tenure with the Dolphins. I know it's unpopular to say now because of the past season, but it is mostly pretty good. Unfortunately, that last year is so bad, it almost undoes all of the good.
I can understand where you're coming from, Taylor. I could certainly... Yeah, all right. I get where you're coming from. Josh, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say about Mike McDaniel is the way I put it to my friends of mine that I talk to about him that are from other teams is cautious optimism.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I think to Taylor's point, I mean, you saw the immediate impact that he had on this team when he came in his first year. You saw a completely different human being, let alone player, just human being in Tua. And you saw the impact that he had on a lot of these players that, for all intents and purposes, just came off a real tough go of things before he came in the building. And you saw that culture change, and we can agree or disagree with how he does things. I mean, I know Keith, you and I, and Taylor, I don't really know where you sit on this, right? To be completely frank, but I know Keith and I agree that, we would prefer a little more of the Mike Tomlin coach than the Mike McDaniel coach. However, you can't deny that he's a good coach when he gets out of his own way, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a world beater coach. I'm not saying that he's a top coach in this league, but he's not a bum, right? I think
I'm glad you bring that up. Sorry, Josh. It's just, I'm glad you bring that up because the whole overview, it wasn't to defend Mike McDaniel and go like, hey guys, we're being too harsh on him. Again, that 2024 season is so bad that it almost undoes the 2 good seasons he had. And one of the reasons that it was so bad isn't just because, Tua got hurt again. It's exactly what you said, Josh. He could not get out of his own way. It is my system's going to work, or we're going to find somebody that works it, instead of let's work around what the strengths of the players are, which is what you did so well also in 2022 and 2023.
Yeah. Yeah. It was weird. It was like he took not only a step back, but it's like he had like a season long brain fart. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like,
kind of.
You know how, like, and I know Keith, you'll understand this. Taylor, sorry, I know you're a little younger than us, but you know how, like, when a record has a crack in it, and it just skips and skips and skips and skips, and that's what it seemed like with Mike McDaniel last year. I mean, last year was a horrific season from our head coach, right? I mean, I'm not talking about the players. The players played their part in it. This isn't all on Mike McDaniel, but as a head coach, looking at the things that a head coach does, it was a bad season. And to Taylor's point, it was bad enough to almost wash away 2 really, really, really good seasons as a head coach. And so I think, like we alluded to earlier, this season is not pivotal in a lot of the ways that you associate to a coach on the hot seat, because I don't really know if he's on the hot seat. We haven't, I don't think any of us, I mean, we have our own opinions. I mean, I think he should be on the hot seat, but you look at the choices and the decisions that were made in this offseason and getting drastically younger and foregoing the secondary for some reason. Those aren't moves that a GM and a head coach make that feel like their job is in jeopardy. And so this season, if that's the case, this season is even more important, in my opinion, from Mike McDaniel's standpoint, and having to really figure out how to get the horse before the cart instead of the cart before the horse, right? And kind of get out of his own way and not be stubborn, and maybe relinquish a little bit of control so he can macro manage instead of micromanage. Little things like that. Learn how to use your timeouts, learn how to get your plays in quicker, learn how to challenge properly because he sucks at it. There's a lot of stuff that he could, if he just makes a little tweak here and there, he's back to 2020, late 2022, early 2023 coach, where, I mean, he had this team top of the league. He had 2 in MVP conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And at one point, so Tua went out and Skylar Thompson, and it seemed like McDaniel just forgot what his strengths were, such they are. It seemed like he forgot how to use Skylar Thompson properly. Whereas in his rookie year, he had Skylar Thompson not playing well, but playing
for him.
Well for him. Playing well enough that he wasn't losing us, football games. Whereas Skylar Thompson comes out against the Bills, against the Seahawks, gets hurt. It just seemed like Mike McDaniel's whole season was just thrown for a loop.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of, and this has happened to me in my life, like just doing other things where you get shook, you get scared or something, right? Like if you're driving on them, like if I'm in the Jeep or if I'm on the motorcycle or whatever the case is, and I hit something or someone jumps in front of me and my heart's racing and I just black out for a second,
Yeah.
right? It just seems like
Yeah.
you never snapped back in. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And I think part of that had to do with the offensive line. And I know
Oh, yeah.
I reference the offensive line all the time, but if you don't have enough time for your quarterback to drop back and scan the field, you're going to throw a bunch of screen passes. And
Yep.
that's kind of just what your offensive line necessitates. So, I think that's part of the problem here. I think that's certainly a big issue with what happened last year. But I just think, like what Taylor said, it was a bad season all around for Mike McDaniel. And, and guys, a bad season for Mike McDaniel. Dolphins went 8-9 without their starting quarterback for most of the season. And, so let's,
and losing both of our like top edge rushers and losing half of our offensive line and then the other half and then Tyreek Hill forgetting how to play football. I mean, all things considered.
Yeah.
Right. It could have been much worse.
Yeah.
You see, not only that, we'll get into the OC and more stuff about how the teams progressed or regressed over the last few years later. But the thing is there are moments, though, in this past season where McDaniel was playing situational football.
Mm-hmm.
We were 4th in time of possession last season. That was done very intently because we couldn't do anything running the ball because the offensive line, Austin Jackson goes down, offensive line completely falls apart, running game can't get anything going. 21st in rushing last season, 15th in passing last season. But then you see that and you're like, okay, that's smart. Try to control the time of possession. Let Anthony Weaver in the defense win you a few games. You don't get your quarterback. I think that is smart football. It's good coaching. But then you look at stuff like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and their stats, and then you go to Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane for 90% of the time. That I don't understand it. No. And even with the bad quarterbacks still get people numbers. Malik Neighbors didn't have a Pro Bowl quarterback with him last year. He broke records. Brock Bowers didn't have a Pro Bowl quarterback last year. He broke records. You can get stats with bad QB play. Couldn't do it last year, but Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane could. And if you're going to be an offensive guru, that's where I take the issue with him in this past season. How can you not get Waddle the ball more? I can at least get Tyreek to an extent because the wrist injury. But Waddle being
it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
We said it so many. How many times did we say that last year?
All the time.
I mean, all the time. I mean, it was one of those things where you watch the game and you're even in the wins and you're like, bro.
Yeah.
Throw it.
I heard him worse because I'm pretty sure you and I both had him on our fantasy teams last year.
I have him on my dynasty league team too, right? And it's just one of those things where it's like, come on, man. Like, just throw him the ball. Just throw him the fucking ball.
Yeah.
Right. And no, you're right. It was screen dump to this guy and a late handoff to this guy and fumble. Oops. Somehow got it to Jonnu and Jonnu turned it into a 7-yard, 70-yard thing, which is awesome, right? Don't get me wrong.
Jonnu and Achane both outplayed what should have been bad decisions to not play to your strengths and your star players, but they actually ended up becoming star players in their own right. But it still doesn't excuse you not getting the ball to Waddle and Hill the entire season. At least I can understand Hill to an extent, but Waddle I still don't get to this day.
Yeah, what I'd really like to see, and Keith, I bet you agree with me on this, is I want to see Achane and Jonnu from last year.
Yeah.
And I want to see Tyreek and Waddle from the previous year.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to mush them together and say, now let's do it this year.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's the thing. That's what makes this team so tantalizing. That's what makes Mike McDaniel as a coach so tantalizing, because he's capable of doing this. He's capable of incorporating all of these weapons into this offense. And if you do take Tyreek and Jalen Waddle from 2023 and Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane from 2024 and just mash them all together into this amalgamation of awesome weapons, then you've got the top offense in the NFL.
And even if some of these players, take a step down production wise, as a whole, you get a better product.
Yeah. So Mike McDaniel, I think moving forward this season, I want to see him evolve a little bit better, play to his players' strengths a little bit better. And I love what he did with Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane. But I'd like to see, you got to get, if you have Tyreek Hill on your offense, it's coaching malpractice not to get him more involved than you got him. Same with Jalen Waddle. And this is something that Mike McDaniel, I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care if Tua gets hurt on the first play of the first week. You still have to get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle involved, as well as Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane. And this is something Mike McDaniel, I'm sure, has been. If I know Mike McDaniel, and I think I do, I think he's been hard on himself. I think this offseason he went to the lab, and I think he's going to do that. I think he's going to get better and grow from that moving forward.
And you ready for a full circle?
Yes.
Cautious optimism.
There you go. Cautious optimism.
Oh, by the way, spin around and knock on some wood because I don't want Tua to get hurt in week one.
Yeah, I hear that. All right, so we're going to move on to offensive coordinator Frank Smith. Now, Frank Smith, it's tough to really quantify what he does or doesn't do for the Miami Dolphins. When you have an offensive head coach, your offensive coordinator is kind of an afterthought. Same way as if you have a defensive coach, it's fair to wonder, it's fair to question what your defensive coordinator actually does. So we have Frank Smith here. So what are your overall thoughts on Frank Smith? Thoughts on his prior seasons, his future seasons. Josh, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think he's kind of, and I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to get crap for it from our fans, right, in the comment section. I think he's kind of all the coaches that we have that we're going to talk about. So all the bigger, higher end coaches, I think he's kind of like the unsung hero of all of them, right? I mean, he's not calling plays, but he is instrumental in game planning, right? I mean, he gets, it seems, at least through reports and through watching and listening and everything and talking to the people that we know, he's instrumental in having a hand in the offensive line and in the run game. And, he's just that kind of steady, quiet, respected, pillar of security, if you will. I mean, not to overplay it, right? I mean, I know I'm waxing poetic here, but I mean, that's kind of what he reminds me of, right?
Yeah.
And, I think, what has he been McDaniel's right-hand man now for a handful of seasons or a few years now?
Yeah.
He's helped install this offense. He really genuinely, has a full grasp of what is expected of him in his role. He doesn't feel slighted. He's not calling plays as the offensive coordinator. He doesn't throw a temper tantrum. He knows his role. He's mature and he's secure in himself. And I like that in a coach. Now, do I believe McDaniel shouldn't be calling plays? I do, personally.
Okay.
Right. I think it should be flipped. I think the offensive coordinator, Frank Smith is more than capable of calling plays. And Mike McDaniel can then focus on the macro head coaching role as opposed to micromanaging an offense. However, I think with the structure of our team, because we all know Mike McDaniel's never given up unless he loses something drastic and he's no longer a head coach.
Well, unless Stephen Ross makes him, basically.
Exactly, and he wouldn't, and Ross won't do that, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where he's Frank Smith, looking at his past career and all of the stops. I mean, he was with the Chargers, he was with the Saints. Both of those when he was there were really, really good offenses, and his strong offensive line background really plays a big role into why he's in the position here that he's in. He was brought in to be the offensive line guru, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's done some really good stuff. I mean, look what he did with Austin Jackson. Look what he did with Robert Hunt before he left. Look what he did with Aaron Brewer coming over. I can't wait to see what he does when he gets his hands on Jonas.
Josh. Come on.
Savaiinaga.
Nice. Right? There he is.
Who's the center? Connor
Williams. Yeah, turned Connor Williams into a really good offensive guard from Dallas into a Pro Bowl center. I mean,
well, if you remember, prior to him joining the Dolphins, a lot of Cowboys fans were also talking about Dolphins fans. I don't know about that signing. He has a lot of penalties. Mm-hmm. He, I don't know if he can actually play center.
But the thing is, and I agree with you, Taylor. But the thing with Connor Williams was he was also miscast in the Cowboys offense. Like
Yeah,
that was a power running scheme, and that's not what Connor Williams did best. And he's retired now. Can you guys believe that? But Connor Williams came here, and Josh, to your point, Frank Smith kind of coached him up, made him into a center, made him into like a borderline all-pro center, in my opinion. Like, he was one of the top centers in the league when he was here.
He was. And so, all of the things that I'm saying, right? And I don't mean to go droning on and on and on about Frank Smith, right? But, I feel pretty confident going into this year with him as the offensive coordinator. I do. I really do. I feel more confident about him as the OC, and this is going to sound crazy, than I do about Mike McDaniel as the head coach. Now, please understand, that is not a slight on Mike McDaniel. We all have our opinions of him. I understand that. But, I think if you look at what Miami did this offseason, I think it plays right into what Frank Smith does best for this team. We invested in more running back depth with Ollie Gordon and Madison, even though I personally don't think Madison will be on the roster. Jalen Wright's another year removed from college and is in an NFL locker room and an NFL weight room with NFL coaches and strength and conditioning coaches and meal prep and all of these nutritional experts and all this stuff. And he should take a step forward. I mean, I said it during one of our pre-draft shows. I think Jalen Wright has the ability to be the best running back on this roster.
Yeah.
Understand, don't jump down my throat, fans. Running back. I think Achane is a Swiss Army knife. He's amazing at everything. But I think from a pure running back standpoint, I think Jalen Wright has the ability to be the best running back on this roster. And what else have we been craving for? We need to solidify this damn offensive line. And I think they did. I think they went out this offseason with a plan for the trenches and they executed it to perfection. And I think on the offensive side of the ball, Smith's experience with this new tooled offensive line with, Daniels and Brewer coming back and Patrick Paul having had shown real good promise, learning under Teron Armstead last year at left tackle, and Savaya Naya coming in as a rookie in between two proven veterans with AJ coming back from injury. I think we have a chance at having a really, really, really good offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. Well said, Josh. Taylor, what are your thoughts on Frank Smith, offensive coordinator?
Really echoing a lot of what Josh said. He really hit everything here, but
yeah,
nailed it.
I will say it's kind of tough because talking about McDaniel and Frank Smith, they're kind of joined at the hip.
Yeah.
Because of the way. Yeah. And that's not me also saying, like, I'm not saying McDaniel does everything either. I just think they both are actually so joined at the hip because they kind of run that same philosophy. I think they actually do have the same mindset. Yeah. So whereas, Josh, you mentioned letting Frank Smith call plays. I think that works because there is a lot to be said about Mike McDaniel's macro coaching. And I would much rather McDaniel be working during the week to get the offensive line ready, scheming up awesome plays, all that stuff, and let Frank Smith decide when to call those plays instead. And then, again, McDaniel could worry more about the timeouts, challenges, stuff that he does need to improve on as a coach. But looking at the stats over the last 3 seasons, it really, to me, comes down to taking that, what I mentioned in the Mike McDaniel segment about using situational football, playing with time of possession, and then going back to that 2023 season with the run game. Being 6th in the league, I believe. Yeah, 6th in the league in rushing last season, or in 2023. 2nd in passing. But to me, the most important thing is the running. And that's where Raheem Mostert, that's where Devon Achane. Achane also got hurt for a lot of that year too. I don't know if you guys remember. He had like 800 yards off of 6 games.
Yeah.
So that's insane.
It was. He had an insane run, and then he was hurt for like half the year.
Yeah, I think it was knee surgery, actually, wasn't it?
No, I don't think there was surgery involved, but I think it was either a bad hamstring or maybe a knee. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Raheem Mostert having that record-breaking season. And now you look exactly what you said, Josh. You look at the running back talent. And this isn't a shot to Raheem Mostert, but it's so much talent in that room. And it's young talent.
Youth as opposed to Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, like you got Achane, Wright, Ollie Gordon, who, Ollie Gordon 2024 isn't the best Ollie Gordon that we've seen. But, man, if we can get him back to that 2023 version,
Yeah, he was the
you
best
have
running
something
back in the
to-
country.
Yeah.
2 years ago. He's a year and a half removed from being the best running back in the country. And mind you, folks, that's when Genty was still there, right? And Ollie Gordon was the number 1 running back in the country, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
Right?
I wouldn't say it wasn't close, but you can make the argument definitely.
Go watch
Josh
film.
isn't taking crazy pills.
Go watch film.
You can make the argument that Ollie Gordon was the best running back in the country 2 seasons ago. That being said, you look at the running back room now, you look at the way the offensive line room is now. There is something about this team, too, to me. I'm not saying it's better, or I'm not saying like this is the best team the Dolphins have had. I think in a lot of ways it's worse. But you look at the depth and the young talent. That's where I'm the most excited I've been as a Dolphins fan during this era.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're only worse in our secondary. I think we've gotten better at just about every position. If you factor in players coming back from injury and players that we're inserting both from a vet standpoint and a rookie standpoint, I think we've improved the offensive line. I think, to your point, we've vastly improved the running back position. Yeah. Quarterback position is the same. It's Tua. But I think we improved our backup drastically with both players, even though I'm not really high on Quinn Ewers. Defensive line is probably the best it's been in many, many years. From a talent level and a depth standpoint, our linebackers are
Malcolm Butler as well from Vegas.
Yep. Yeah. And then our linebackers are improved. The only and thank God our punter.
Yeah.
Right. We got Stonehouse.
Well, we're going to talk about the secondary right now because we're going to move on to defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. Now, Anthony Weaver came over from the Ravens. He was a defensive line coach last season. So last season he was there. It was his first season with the Miami Dolphins. He was defensive coordinator. I thought he did a pretty stellar job personally. He was defensive coordinator with the Texans prior to that. That was just a bad Texans team all around. I think he was just kind of set up to fail there. But Taylor, I'm going to go to you on this one. What are your thoughts on Anthony Weaver? This seasons prior, how do you, moving forward, what do you think about Anthony Weaver?
Well, of course, he's a former player, former D lineman, 2nd round pick by the Ravens, I believe, back in the day. 4 seasons with Baltimore, 3 with Houston. That's just his playing career. Then he goes to be a coach. He's, of course, known for his run with Baltimore. He brought that over to Miami. And the main thing, I'm not going to go through all the numbers. Dolphin fans, you kind of get the deal. It's been a revolving door of defensive coordinators last 3 seasons. Had Josh Boyer, then Vic Fangio, now Anthony Weaver. But the thing when you look at the team stats and then also the stars of the defense, quote unquote, Anthony Weaver probably had the least amount to work with. Yeah. And he has the best team stats, in my opinion, of all the defensive coaches. And I think it just goes to show, like, hey, you know what? Stats are stats. Sure, whatever. But if this is what he's putting up with not a whole lot of talent, imagine when you bring in that influx of youth, you bring in Kenneth Grant to that D-line to go alongside Zach Sealer. Anthony Weaver didn't have Christian Wilkins.
No.
That's a big, big fall off right there, regardless of how you feel about Calais Campbell, who's a beast. But you look at the rest of the talent you bring in this offseason, the secondary is where we'll definitely see. But the linebacking group, especially the D-line, I'm excited to see what Anthony Weaver can do going into year 2.
Yeah, I am too. And, there's a reason why Anthony Weaver was kind of a sexy name as a dark horse candidate for some of these teams to pick as their head coach.
Yeah, multi-interview guy, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was interviewed by a few teams.
I mean, I think you and I were like, dude, he's gone.
I thought the Saints were going to take him. I thought for sure the Saints were taking Anthony Weaver. And then they kind of reversed course, went with Kellen Moore. Happy they did it. But this is one of those seasons where if, the secondary, much maligned secondary, right now, looks like Cam Smith and Storm Duck are going to be our stars on the outside. Unless things change, and things certainly could change. But if Anthony Weaver is able to get this unit into like the top half of the league, he's getting a head coaching job next year. Like done.
Maybe ours.
Yeah, well, maybe ours, but like he was a dark horse last year. He's going to be at the top of a lot of teams' lists, going into next year, if he can make this Dolphins defense look. I don't want to say presentable because that doesn't seem fair to the guys we have in the room. But like, if he can get the most out of this Dolphins defense again, like he did last year, he's going to be on the short list of a lot of teams.
Keith, I could add on to it as well for you. So Anthony Weaver's defense last year was 9th in pass yards against, 9th in rush yards against, 4th in total yards against, 10th in points.
Yeah,
those are all fantastic. Then you go to sacks, 27th in the league.
Yeah.
22nd in interceptions. So while a lot of good, those last two.
Well, but understand, there's context.
Right? Yeah, there is context. Exactly. That's what I was about to get into.
Yeah.
No Jalen Phillips, no Bradley Chubb. You got a rookie defensive end who you're trying to develop, who was a raw prospect. Did a pretty good job with Chop Robinson, but he's still only one guy, with Zach Sealer ending up having to really be a pass rusher last season again.
Yeah.
And interceptions. Like, there is room for improvement. And everything you said, Keith, with the influx of talent, I would really not bet against Anthony Weaver to be a head coaching candidate next year.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Josh, what do you think about Anthony Weaver?
Yeah, I think Taylor nailed it, right? Crushed it out right out of the park. For me, the only thing I continuously find myself saying is I'm excited. Like, there's excitement when you hear Anthony Weaver, I perk up, right? Inside, outside, my fandom perks up, right? Because you saw what he did with an injury-riddled defense last year. I mean, Taylor just rattled off a bunch of stuff, right? Which is all good and bad, right? I mean, he wasn't perfect, right? But there were points in the year where we were nationally, in the NFL, we were ranked as a top 5 unit for a couple weeks. And then we were a top 10 unit for a couple weeks. And then injuries hit and we dropped a little. Then we came back up. And he was resilient, right? When we hired Weaver, you know what it felt like to me? It felt like, just as much as kind of an X's and O's kind of higher, it also felt like a culture play, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like, all right, we're the Rain nightclub, if you all remember from the early 90s from Vegas. We're the Rain nightclub of the NFL. We're having parties, we're having fun. We have all the fast guys, all these personalities, and a coach that wears, that dresses like the players do. And he seemed like the steadying anchor of the room. Right. And you could tell the players already bought in from day one when it came to him. And, and I think he's done a really good job to kind of reshape the identity of the defense. Right. Because if you think back to, Fangio, even there, there was a lot to not like about how Fangio was, what he did with the players that he had available, how he alienated players, how he set, he pushed some of the young players to the side as soon as they screwed up. And, Boyer, yikes. I mean, we don't have enough time to talk about him. So you could tell, like, right away, right, that the culture was changed on the defensive side of the room. And it was all because of Weaver's presence, his vibrato, his personality, and his coaching style. And, I like that the Dolphins not only invested in the offensive line, which I think was a kind of offensive priority number one, but we also invested to get younger, faster, and more versatile on defense, on the defensive line, at some of the linebacker positions, not in the draft, but with who we signed, and even some of the safeties. I mean, they might not be star-studded safety options that we have, right? But they're not horrible. They're better than Boyer. Go team, right? And I think, I guess the potential for this defense, the easiest way that I can describe how I feel about this is that the potential of this defense this season in particular has the chance to really surprise people. It's not going to show up every week. It's going to be quiet. It's going to be an assassin. It's going to be like, it's that kind of vibe, right? Where you're going to be like, every week you're going to be like, oh, the defense was pretty good. Wow. It's not bad. Oh, wow. And then by the end of the season, we're a top 7 unit. It's that kind of vibe,
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that. And, with Anthony Weaver, we went from Vic Fangio, who was kind of a ball buster. He was not a player's coach. He was a grizzled, older football lifer kind of guy. Josh Boyer, again, we're not going to get into that.
Goofball.
He was just a he was an all or nothing kind of guy. Just zero blitzes every other down. Anthony Weaver just kind of restored a little bit of normalcy, restored a little bit of culture and all that stuff. Like, it was a really, really nice hire. I'm excited to see what he does with this team this season, because he's working with, I'd say, less talent, especially in the secondary. Maybe a little more talent, maybe a little more talent on the defensive line, but younger talent on the defensive line. We'll see if he can, work wonders. And I think he can. I have faith in Anthony Weaver. So we're going to move on to the last guy on this list here, Craig Aukerman, special teams coordinator. Josh, tell us about him.
Yeah, from Tennessee, right? I mean, I think he's kind of like a little bit of a mystery guy, right? I mean, he was a signing and there wasn't a lot of fanfare about him. You have to kind of dig into the minutia of special teams coaches, and to Tennessee in particular when you try to look up the stuff, right? But when you look historically, and I don't know if you both agree with me, special teams is one of those areas where you feel like whoever you hire is either going to make an immediate impact super fast or not at all, right? It's one of those things where he's going to come in and either shake things up, and he made a really good hire or signing in the punter. I think it's a massive improvement over Jake Bailey. Was it Ryan Stonehouse? Is that
Ryan Stonehouse? Yeah.
So I think like just that move alone, and if you go back and look at his time in Tennessee, he had some moments, right, that you can say, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. All right. You sneaky little guy, right? And I think I think he has the chance to be probably one of probably our best since Rizzi.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he's got that kind of skill or that kind of talent to do things. And, the Titans, sure, kind of up and down, right? I mean, but they're the Titans. Let's be honest. But, he coached up guys like Stonehouse that he brought over from Tennessee, right? And turned him into a rocket leg of a person, and he turned some undrafted returners and rushers and gunners into some of the better ones in the NFL. So, unknown, TBD. I mean, who the heck knows what's really going to happen, but you hope that he's going to come in. I don't think he can be worse than who he had for the last handful of years. And I'm not even going to mention his name, right? But I think he's a better coach already. What I'm curious to see if he can is if he can clean up the inconsistencies, and if special teams can start to play a factor in why we win games and not why we lose games.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing right there, is that, I don't think we need, a Devin Hester or a Dante Hall back there returning punts.
Would be great though.
It would be awesome. I won't say no to it, but like, we don't need that. We just need them not to be
fair catch.
Us. Yeah.
Oh, they like last year, I think we led the league in fair catches.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah. So Taylor, what are your thoughts on the special teams hire?
Yeah, a lot of what Josh said. I know there's a lot of talk of his 2023 season with Tennessee not being the best, but I really like what he's done with Stonehouse. Stonehouse, I think, is one of the more underrated punters in the league. He can absolutely drill it downfield, like absolutely. I wanted to say something else, but this is a family-friendly podcast, so I'll refrain from it. But what I'm excited for with special teams, and I'm glad we ended it here because this goes to the defense and to the offense with the players we brought in. I'm so excited to see Zeke, the kid from Georgia Tech, that drafted in the 7th round, and also Dante Trader, from Maryland.
You talking about Zeke Biggers?
Yeah,
wasn't he from Auburn?
Georgia Tech.
Oh, I thought he was for some reason. I thought he was from Auburn.
And not only that, Dante Trader Jr., who I think is going to be fantastic in special teams as well. Like, And the thing that I love about across the board of what the Dolphins have done is you look at people like Andrew Van Ginkel and Christian Wilkins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're great players, but they're dogs. Like they're players that fans can latch on to because they know they're going to give 120% effort on every play. Dante Trader is a dog. Kenneth Grant is a dog. Jonah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I don't want to offend him there, is a dog. So I'm very excited to see whatever this entire coaching staff can do with these players because I think we actually do have talent here.
Yeah. Well, in regards to Mike McDaniel, who's coming back, Frank Smith, Anthony Weaver, Craig Aukerman, new hire, I think the theme here is exactly what Josh said at the beginning of this show: cautious optimism. And I think that's how we should approach this until proven otherwise. So guys, look, if you like what you saw here, please like, subscribe, leave some comments. Tell me what you think about these coaches. Tell us what you think about these coaches. We'd love to hear from you. And we will see you next time.